if you guys are actually open to doing something different, I have a lot of ideas.
We love new ideas.
Just not too new, because we got a pretty tight formula that we got to hit.
I wouldn't say it's a formula so much as a structure that we 100% know works, so we're going to do it over and over again.
Ike, welcome to the Awards Tour podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I have a feeling this conversation is going to be fresh. I'm just saying.
Oh, I'm digging it. Well, listen, you already gotten the raucous reviews from South by Southwest.
Crazy.
Honestly, I really wanted to start with asking you about this because I was there. I saw the reception. I know Seth and Evan have done a ton of premieres down there. And I think, were you there for blockers? Like, how much experience did you have with the South by crowd?
I've had a few things premiere there. The first thing was Neighbors way back in the day. It was at Paramount Theater. And it is like the greatest place to premiere something. The crowd is so ready to go. And then I went back when Blockers was happening. My wife was giving birth to our daughter like the day before or after, so I couldn't go. And I hold that against my wife and child still. I'm still very upset about that. And then I was there a couple of years back when Jordan Peele premiered Us. And so I've had experience there in that theater that weekend, and it is always great. But you never know. You know what I mean? You never know. It's always a different time. This is a TV show, not a movie. Will it play the same? And about a minute or 90 seconds into that screening, got a couple big laughs came, and I was just like, I kind of let go because I was like, okay, I think the folks are gonna like it, and then they definitely did. It played just great, and it was really, you don't get to watch a TV show in a crowd a lot, and that really is like fun and cool.
Yeah, and I think for your character in particular, folks, I think you would be nervous about that moment because let me just put it out there. Your character, he's doing like drugs, he's crying. He at one point he thinks he's like about to be the top dog, and like the next minute he goes through a lot in that first episode, and you're like out there. I'm curious for you, what was your favorite reaction from the crowd to something that your character did? Because you had so many moments. Like the crying one is the one I think of when you just
and that's the one just because that's my first kind of big swing of the episode. And just to watch that moment, get that laugh, I was like, okay, we're working from a good baseline here. They understand the character is crazy and very troubled. So it really kind of just lets you relax a little bit. And then you get to kind of sit back and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like until you get those moments, but to see them kind of connect with Sal and kind of be like, oh, we love to hate this guy already. It's exhilarating.
Yeah, we'll get to that actually too. This is obviously not the first time you've worked with Seth and Evan, but they're trading off directing duties in this show. And I'm curious for you, when you look at an episode like the second episode, Oneer, I'm not going to spoil it, but it talks a lot about oneers. There's a oneer in the shot of the studio. And then you're also doing a oneer in the like filming of the episode. So it's a lot. So I'm curious, what's that like watching? I don't remember which one directed that particular episode, like what it was like for you as the actor watching your two friends do this very complicated, like Simone Biles sort of like dismount.
It was, I was wondering like, how are they going to pull it off? But I should have learned by now just to not doubt those guys. The way they handled trading off directing is very seamless. I find that episode in particular, there was a couple moments where, you know, Seth's character loves to drive these stupid classic cars. And so there was a lot of, you know, moments in that episode where we're trying to get, you know, the shot, and it has to lay perfectly for the camera to be mounted to the hood of the car. And then the car's supposed to take off and the car floods out. The engine floods out. And just to have like Seth and Evan in control, just the most easygoing guys. They know what they want. They know they need to get it, but they're not screaming. They're not freaking out. They really keep a really great set. And I think that makes the yield more enjoyable. It makes the scenes funnier. It makes the performances richer. But more importantly, it just makes the set a good hang. Where even though it is tense in the sense that, are we going to pull this off? Are we going to be able to do this? It's really technically hard. There's not like a feeling of dread or worry. And I don't know if that's because they're Canadian or what, but they just really seamlessly play off of each other And sometimes you don't even know who's directing. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're like, it's just they're both so on the same page, and that's a really rare thing.
Yeah, and I'll set it up for folks that haven't seen the series. Setting it up, Seth plays a newly appointed studio head at a sort of like embattled studio, and you're like his friend, also colleague, who was up for the job but didn't get it. And one of the things I thought was actually interesting about this episode and more about your character is he is kind of despicable. He says the most despicable things, but he's actually protecting Seth's character through a lot of the series. And in that episode in particular, like protecting him from himself, because one of the things that the show kind of proves by the end of the season is Seth doesn't realize he's not an executive anymore. No. He's like the studio head. And so he has to act differently. And a lot of his issues are around that. So I'd be curious if you could talk a little bit about, because this hits a little bit different than just the broad comedy that it portrays itself to be.
Definitely. In the first episode, when you first meet Sal, and he kind of says, hey, Patty's been fired, Catherine O'Hara, and they're going to replace her, and I think I'm going to get the job. He really believes that. And a couple scenes later, when he finds out he didn't, and it's Matt, there's a world where, Sal is like, congrats, buddy. And then you see him kind of scheming. And throughout the series, is he undermining Matt or what? But I think where they landed, which I really thought was just much more realistic and nuanced, was the moment Sal finds out he didn't get the job, he's basically like, what do you need, boss? I'm your man. He is a survivor. A lot of the guys, and I do mean guys, that he started with in this business have left or died or retired or been canceled. And he does not want to leave this business. Sal does not want to move to Portland and work for his brother's craft beer company. He likes his job. He likes the perks. He likes being friends with Pedro Pascal. And he knows that right now, the best way for him to keep that job is for his best friend to continue to be his boss. So in that episode, he's not scheming other than just to protect his friend, because he's therefore protecting himself. So I really appreciated how those guys kind of wrote that and kind of how they shaded that for me. So instead of me trying to, succession the company out from under him, I'm the more realistic thing of just being like, hey man, if you hit someone with your car at 3 a.m, give me a call. I'll help you bury the body.
Yeah, like I'm that guy now.
I'm the guy.
I'm your Roy Cohn.
You need me. Don't get me fired. I'm your Roy Cohn.
Yeah, there you go. Like you need me to bury the bodies, literally. The thing I thought was also really interesting about your character, and why I think folks, when they get a chance to see it, I mean, I've been a fan of your career, but I really think this is one of the best things that you've done, because it's just got all those different layers. But another aspect of that, and this is to getting to the more broad comedy of it, is I have to assume that some of these lines are coming from you. Some of these like coke-addled improvs. Like I know Evan and Seth are amazing writers, but I feel like they're from you. So can you talk a little bit about how they did that? They don't hire you and Catherine O'Hara and Catherine Hahn and all of these incredible improvers and just leave the horse in the stable, I would hope.
They are, I think they are, as you said, they're great writers. And they also had Pete Hike and Alex Gregory and Frida Perez. But Seth is a brilliant improviser himself. And they are very aware of who they cast. And I think in a lot of other shows, every scene you see, it would be littered with improv. But because of the nature of the show and how they shoot it, it was a little different. Some of these scenes, normally on a normal show, you show up and you block, you rehearse and block the scene, and then you maybe rehearse it again. Maybe if it's a complicated scene, maybe you rehearse it a second time. For this, we would rehearse for hours sometimes. Sometimes for the episode 2, for the oneer, there was a couple days where we rehearsed all morning and then had lunch and then came back and shot hard for 5 hours. In that rehearsal space, that was the time to be trying out your zingers and your lines and your improvs, because then they can, if it gets a laugh from Seth and Evan, they will incorporate it into the scene and you will do it. But once we start rolling, if you're out there and you're throwing out new little one-liners and stuff and you're screwing up the rhythm and cues and stuff, they're going to not be thrilled. So it was almost like every take was a play. And, you know, when you talk to like a theater actor and you're like, well, what if I improvise this? They'll be like, don't you dare, because that's my cue. And if you were going off and doing all these crazy lines and I don't know when to come out, it's going to look bad. So they were good at mining, but once they locked in, that was it. You know what I mean? Really lock in as much as possible, just because you don't want to be the person that they're doing a big reset for because you decided to throw in a new line.
Yeah, that's literally Matt in that episode that I'm talking about.
Literally Matt.
Like, it's literally Matt in that episode, which is great. That brings me to my next point. I would suspect that you would say something like that because I know that part of that character is definitely things that you brought to it, but there's also this idea that the way they shot it, like even when they're not doing one-ers, they're doing very elaborate scenes. Like these are very intense. Like they are literally doing movie magic, shots that are pulled from like Scorsese, shots that are pulled from other like crazy movies and putting it in this. What is that like to then try to do a comedy? Because it's basically shot like a Steven Spielberg drama, but you're having to do like, sorry to say it, jokes. Like it's like, you know, like this isn't again.
It was so like refreshing, you know what I mean? Like I remember Seth early on is like, the show's gonna be so fun, man. It's gonna be stupid people screaming at each other in beautiful locations. And once you see what they're doing, first of all, when you first walk into the studio building, Julie Berghoff is our production designer, and she's an actual genius and built this incredible like Mayan revival 1928 just beautiful building. And you look at everyone and everyone's in these incredible outfits that Cami Lennox, the wardrobe designer, has dressed everyone in. So it already felt a little different. It already felt a little different from, you know, stuff that I'd done before. And then once you see it and you see how it's lit and how it's shot, it was just, you were so excited that it never felt like, wait, I should be saying something dramatic right now. The lighting's too nice. You know what I mean? It just, we got into that zone and got into the rhythm of each take. And even though it was totally different than any way I've ever shot comedy, I felt like if anything, it helped the comedy more just because it just gave it a new patina.
No, that's very fair. And then the last thing I'll say before we talk a little bit more about the rest of your career is the other bonus of this one is like on a Tuesday, some of the greatest filmmakers and actors of our time will just pop up to say something absurd and then dip out. Like Scorsese, Ron Howard, Charlize Theron. It's just, it goes on and on. Who is your favorite random person that popped up this season? And that's like a hard push, whether they're playing themselves or somebody else.
I'm going to give two answers, and please forgive me, but on one hand, it would be crazy to not say Martin Scorsese. He's my favorite director of all time, and to be able to work with him on any level, let alone acting with him, was like wildest fantasy. The person that I was really just tickled by and blown away by was Sarah Polley. I always loved Sarah Polley as an actor, and then she left and became this incredible filmmaker, and I've loved her movies. And for her to come back to acting and do this and play herself just boiling angry the entire time, absolutely hating Seth and being mad at me. I just really liked her a lot, and she just made me laugh a lot. So I will, there's so many answers I could give. I will just say those two.
Those are pretty good because, and I like literally pulling this up. Like that, like she was iconic at like 8. She was in Baron Munchausen, right? Like this woman has been like
Baron
iconic
Munchausen, John Adams. The movie Go. I saw Go and just left LA when I moved to LA. So I've just always been like, I love Sarah Polley. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll never get to act with her. And then cut to a few years later, and she's like staring me down like she's gonna kill me.
Yeah, I kind of hinted about it in my first questions, but I don't know if everybody knows like your very intensive like improv career. Like I think they knew that you were like a part of like Mad TV and you've done some of this other kind of stuff, but like you come from like a family of people that did improv. You were like part of that like big Chicago like improv scene. I know your dad was later, but you know what I mean? Like your brother and like
it's in the blood. There's something in the blood.
Or in the water. I don't know. Maybe it's that dye I'll put in the river. I don't know. But
the green dye.
Exactly. I'd be curious if you could talk about how that is now later into like your acting career. And because I do feel like now looking back on it, so many of those people have like just longer careers because they can kind of do like there's got to be like some dissection about what it is about these folks that do these comedy improv groups that make them like very next level actors, even more so than like theater people, I would say. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because they're theater people and they're writer people and they're actor people and they're comedy people. Like that's a lot.
It's a grab bag. It's a real grab bag. I studied improv for years. I taught it. I performed it for many, many years. It is, to me, the greatest tool if you want to be in this business on the creative side. When you do improv, and I'm talking like Chicago style kind of long form improv where the scenes are longer. You're talking like a 3-4 minute scene where you're just kind of making it up as you go based on a suggestion someone from the audience told you. It teaches you range. You might be playing the president of the United States. You might be playing a cat. You know what I mean? Like and all the great improvisers, no matter what they're playing, they commit to it. They don't bail. So right away, that's a great acting tool. For me as a writer, it helped me so much as a writer because, when I would do an improv scene, I would like kind of right away in the first sentence, kind of lay out what the scene is. You know what I mean? I'd walk out there with whoever and be like, Governor, we're having a problem here. The water pressure, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So right away, you're kind of creating like, what is the scene about and how to get out the important parts of the scene in an economical, quick way so the audience isn't wondering what the hell's going on. It preps you so much for all these different components. And then especially the comedy of it all, that's a whole other thing where you're doing this for laughs, right? You're doing this for an audience of people who are laughing at you. And so you can go for the joke, but you can also play the straight man. It just really, I think it's like the best toolkit you could have. And that's why whenever people say to me, like, I want to be an actor, I want to be a writer, I want to be a director, what's some advice? I'm always like, whatever city you're in, find an improv theater. And they are there. You know what I mean? A couple of them went away during COVID, but a lot of them are back. And, whether it's Second City IO, UCB, Cold Town in Austin, there's going to be a place where you can go and you can work on those things. And so I'm really lucky that I had such great fellow performers and instructors way back in the 90s that I still to this day in every single project, whether I'm in the writer's room with Mindy Kaling and my partner Dave, or I'm on set with Seth and Martin Scorsese, or I'm in my bedroom by myself writing, I apply so much of the stuff that I learned back in the day to all those things.
Yeah, I mean, the proof is in it too, because again, Mindy Project, Mad TV, all that stuff had like, big fandoms, and I think even like your voice work there's stuff to that. All right, so this is an interview that we're doing with Rotten Tomatoes, and like I have a producer and I have people behind it. This is just me. I want to know. I really want to know about this because you're part of a movie that I have had a lot of time, and I've thought more about this movie than probably the director, and that is 2016 Suicide Squad.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I just want to tell you something, and you don't know this about me, but I've had long discussions. You call people about it because I loved the first hour of that movie. It is one of my favorite movies for the first hour. And then right around the time that you disappear, it stops being my favorite movie. And it becomes something that I'm so angry about that I like have lifelong conversations with friends about it. I want to know how much of that character was you, because in my personal opinion, like when your character disappears, like not long after that, this goes sideways. I want to know how much of that character was you, because that character is crazy.
I've always said the minute I leave a film, it just falls apart. I've said that in every movie I've ever been in. I remember David Ayer was like telling me like that this guy is a dirty, rotten, corrupt, bad guy. And so whenever I hear stuff like that, I love to hear that, because the trick then is to try to find humor in there, try to find, moments that don't make you just boring and broad. And so when we were shooting that, we had a lot of fun shooting it. I remember shooting some scenes with Will, and kind of right away, my attitude with that stuff is like, if you have a director who's kind of game and the cast who's cool, just start improvising, start throwing out lines. And no one knew.
So browser history was yours. Delete my browser.
That was definitely mine. And I remember too, God bless Will being like laughing really hard, and Joel Kinnaman laughing, and Will being like, yeah, yo, man, do more. So I really do look at that fondly, and it was fun to go. It was a great group of people. The cast was all so nice and beautiful, all international hotties, and all the friends of theirs who all hung out with were just so nice and wonderful. So I really think, and I got to spend a time in Canada for the first time, and I love Canada. So I really do look at that fondly. But that line, I can end the controversy. That was definitely my line.
I dig it. I'm sorry. It was the best. I stand by that. And by the way, I could go for hours talking about that movie and dissecting your character too, because like him and Margot Robbie, there's a fan fiction in between those two characters.
Sure. I always said if they get a proper sequel to that movie, I couldn't imagine a world where I don't get killed. Instantly, where Griggs doesn't get like popped off from a mile away by Deadshot out in the bayou or something.
Facts. One thing I did want to talk to you about, and I think it's kind of weird, I don't want to get too political about it, but you made this movie, and then not too long after you made it, it seems that the reality is stranger than fiction, and that's The Oath.
Yeah.
Like your directorial and like writing debut, like I just, as the person who made that movie, how do you feel like, oh, if I put that out now, that'd be like the biggest hit in the world? Or do you feel like that was just like the oracle? Because we are nuttier now than what you wrote in that movie. And that movie is bonkers.
I think we've exceeded it. I think I'm not on social media a lot now, but occasionally people will write, oh, this is just like The Oath. I don't know what to say. I knew it was going to be bad. I try to imagine a world where it was a little more heightened, and I like to imagine that we had more guardrails and we were maybe better than that, but I don't think we are maybe. And again, like when you watch things that are happening now where it's like unidentified people from some random department that they won't say who they are like arresting people and taking them away. It's all.
That's it's the plot of your movie. And that was supposed to be a dark, absurdist comedy. I don't know. I just wonder how you, like, if you just send it to people now as like Christmas gifts to be like, maybe this can help you laugh through it.
I do appreciate people now when they do see it are very like, I think it's weird, right? Because it's one of those things you don't want to be like, it's so great, man. I loved it. Like the reaction is more like, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, we're all screwed. So it's a little bittersweet. But I realized a few years ago, I can't even pretend to prognosticate what's going to happen in this country, but I'm definitely not loving the way it's trending right now. And maybe if I make a movie where everything's happy and people are nice and normal and not trying to be fascist, that will happen next.
Honestly, I'd like to see a follow-up. I'd be really happy with it. The last thing I wanted to ask you about too, which I think is funny that you were a part of this time, you did a few of the parody movies with vampires. This is, by the way, like I really like your filmography. Like I've watched Bless Your Heart, I've watched Mindy Project, but everyone asks you about those. I want to ask you about this stuff because this stuff is more fun to me. What were those sets like? Because that is a generation of like 2010, 2000, whatever. They don't know that those movies happened now.
It's such a weird moment in time, right? Where it's like literally those movies were like 2005 to 2009, I think, for me, right? Yeah. And it was this crazy moment. If you look at like content from around that time, especially kind of mass marketing content, it's crazy. Like America was going crazy. We were like everything, like the sex button was turned all the way up. The inappropriate joke button, everything was just maxed out. Those movies, the sets were incredibly fun. Those directors, Aaron and Jason, were like lovely guys, and they were really, they were really kind to me. That was at a time where I was kind of just off Mad TV, and I really wasn't getting work as an actor. And God bless those guys. They put me in those movies, and one of them I was able to get enough money to buy my wife an engagement ring. So I always look back at them, very fondly. And I still see people from those movies. In fact, on the show I did called Running Point, Diedrich Bader, we put him on the show, and Diedrich's a guy I met doing those movies. And it all comes back to The Oath, because when I was getting ready to do it, and I wrote this part for Tiffany Haddish, because I just thought she was so great. I saw her in this movie, Keanu, and I was like, she is incredible. I want her to play my wife in this. And I remember she came to the Mindy Project set. We sat in my trailer and we talked, and I was like, you're just so great. It's so great to meet you. And she just looked at me and she goes, you don't even remember we were meeting Spartans together, do you? And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And then I remembered, like, there was a sequence where, like, I don't know, I was like Dane Cook getting sent to hell or something.
You
and
were Dane Cook.
Tiffany
Seriously,
was
though.
there. And so yeah, I really do look back at those times very fondly. And again, those guys were just so nice to me. Anyone who hired me at that time, I just have such sweet feelings for. And so yeah, it's
No,
it's
those are
positive.
ike. I'm not saying that is like a bad. I've watched them all. I've
Yeah,
watched
yeah.
all of them. So like, please don't think that.
No, not at all. No. And I'm sure someday I will show my kids them. You know what I mean? Like, not quite now, but I think pretty soon.
But you have to show them what it's based off of, because that was the deal. That was my generation of like teen movies and then
Right.
later movies. So the parodies just felt a big part of it. Anyway,
I do remember, I will tell you, I do remember, like, God bless my parents. They see everything I do. And the third one of those we did, I think, was like a parody of the Twilight films. And my parents had never seen the Twilight films. And everything I do, no matter what people say, my parents were always like focusing on the bright things. Oh, you look great. I thought you were so funny. And I remember they saw this parody of the Twilight films, and my dad had no context. He literally, like, did not know what the parody was. And I remember him being like, yeah, I mean, your hat, you had a great hat. So even the parents.
we're gonna get out of here, but I do have to say, your dad, who folks who don't know, was a longtime Cook County attorney, but he was the judge on Jury Duty.
Yes.
And was part of that whole thing, which is crazy for folks that don't know. And I love that that was your dad's like first acting gig. Way to go out, go up with a bang, daddy.
And he's got more on the horizon. And
I was just about to say, is there more on the horizon? You can preview your next act or his next act, but just tell me what's going on.
There is, without getting into any details. I mean, first of all, he's fantastic in such shows as The Studio and Running Point. But there is something pretty close around the corner that we're hopefully going to share with the public that is very dad-centric.
Is this y'all together?
This would be me and him and my brother kind of working on something together. So hopefully within a pretty short time frame, we'll have a little more info on that.
When this announcement comes out, we're going to come back to this video and I'm just going to like quote tweet it, be like, this is what he was talking about with him and his family.
We were the first to know.
Funny. I know. Anyway, thank you so much.
It was so great talking to you. Your questions are just so wonderful and thoughtful, and you're just so wonderful.